And welcome back to the Big Swing Noting Podcast, sending Bears back to New South Wales since 2019. Can you believe what we've just seen? Because I'm not sure that I'll ever truly understand. If you did understand, you're a goddamn lunatic, because quite frankly, I don't think anyone was able to see that coming. On so many different levels. World Cup is over. Australia are champions. I don't get it. We'll talk about all of the ins and outs of the World Cup later on. But firstly, I would just like to say, what the fuck? Can I say that? What? This World Cup was a real roller coaster for me, man, because it started out and there was no World Cup fever. I mentioned this in my last episode. I faked it up. No one was really that keen for the World Cup except probably for the Indians. And rightfully so. Home World Cup, team looks unbeatable, and it damn well was for, what was it, like more than 90% of the tournament. It doesn't really compute in my mind that this was a World Cup, but then towards the back end, there's going to be some dead rubbers. It's going to be neither here nor there. It took, two or 3 weeks till we had our first genuine competitive games. And that it kind of left you a little bit flat. It kind of left me wanting a little bit more. However, what this World Cup has demonstrated to me is that there is absolutely a place in cricket for one-day internationals, for 50 overs at that. Obviously T20 is the future, and Test cricket is the legacy, and all the rest of it. And there's been a lot of talk about potentially the next World Cup in South Africa, if that even happens. Because let's be real, if there's the RTC are going to take away a World Cup from one country other than Pakistan, it's probably going to be South Africa. So whether that does end up being the last World Cup, who damn well knows. But the tactical application and the ongoing collection of information, shout out Ian Bishop, is just so fascinating on so many levels in one-day cricket. I would even argue it's honestly even more fascinating in a few more different phases and layers in one-day cricket than there are in Test match cricket. I still love Test match cricket. I'll watch that more than I will meaningless bilateral one-day international. However, the study that goes into preparing for a one-day game and the amount of tactical application that goes on the fly, the matchups, it is also so fascinating. And especially when you've got very varying conditions, I should say, in India. Like the pitch in Ahmedabad last night was pretty how you going, right? It was worn in. There hadn't been that many big totals on it in the games that had been played, and then you had games where 400 was reached 4 times this World Cup, I think, something like that. And we almost did we have a chase of 380? I'm not sure. New Zealand made 400 and then lost the goddamn game. They also almost chased 380 for Australia. So there's just been so many varying types of matches, which is really cool. And I will still always maintain that, and I think the majority of cricket fans will agree with this, is that the best one-day internationals are the low or the mid-scoring, between what we consider low-scoring these days. From 230 to about 280 is about the prime range. And the reason for that is because even though the Australia versus New Zealand game, I'll use for an example, was ridiculously high-scoring and really close, actually. It was 4 or 5 runs, which is one stroke, right? It's one ball that goes differently, completely changes this World Cup. I don't know if everyone else felt the same. I never really felt like New Zealand were truly in the game, even when Ratchan was tonking them, even when Jimmy Neesham just stood up and hit a couple down the ground and all the rest of it. I never truly felt like there was that aura around it. Today, even though the result, or last night I should say, even though the result was way different to the Australia-New Zealand game, it felt so much more interesting. It felt like a World Cup final. It felt like it had meaning. And so much part of that went into the preparation. It went into how the phases of the game were going to be applied. And because, again, India only scored 240. The best one-day international, probably the best cricket match of all time in the last World Cup, it was the exact same score. So I think it's just more so when you've got that mid-tier total, you're able to... There's just a lot more that goes into it rather than let's just go ham the whole way through. hopefully that kind of makes sense. Because if we're going ham the whole way through, we got T20s for that, right? And there's just a lot more matchup bases there's just as much matchup bases in T20 cricket, to be honest with you. But there's just a lot more variance in one-day internationals, and that's why at their peak of the powers, they are so fun to watch. And I really, really enjoyed the last couple of weeks of this tournament. I really felt the cricket fan get invested in me. It came out in me in many different ways throughout this tournament as it progressed. And in the middle part is when we started to have a few better matches, and then it looked like towards the end there were going to be a whole lot of meaningless ones. It just kept being interesting enough. And then we got to the finals weren't really that interesting either, to be honest, I suppose. But I guess everything just kind of happened. I mean, the Australia-South Africa semi-final was pretty interesting, I suppose. But it was just enough there to keep you going. And I like that. I enjoyed that. And even though this World Cup it won't go down as one of the all-time greats. Like, it's no 1999 or anything like that. Or even a 2019. It still, to me, says that there is absolutely a future for one-day cricket, because the true cricket fan, and I feel like this is a really nice add-on to the T20 cricket, because people say, we want to just make the 50 over 4 format an elongated T20. Let's make it a 40 over format, right? But you lose so much of what I've just talked about, right? So if you're trying to progress back into Test cricket, and I think in so many different ways, the way the game is played is really, really fascinating. So for new cricket fans, I absolutely still think that there is a certain endearment about one-day cricket. There is absolutely there, and hopefully can still be sustained for the coming years. But we'll see what happens in that front. But either way, you see the name of this episode. We are giving every single team from this World Cup A grade. I got some hot takes, yo! I got some hot takes, and you're going to have to wait to the end to see them, because I'm going in reverse ladder position. So we're starting with the Netherlands. We'll end with India, which is the team I have the most to say about, funnily enough. Well, actually, no, you probably thought I was going to say the most about Australia. I actually don't have much to say about them. I've said enough, and all of what I've said has been wrong. I even made a tweet at the start of this World Cup. It went like this: unless something drastically changes, you simply will not win a World Cup with Steve Smith at 4 and Marnus Labuschagne at 5. In the words of Kerry O'Keefe, that's why they pay me the big bucks, mate. That's why they pay me the big bucks. But hey, I mean, that shows why I'm just a teenager, and that's why I don't know anything about cricket, and why these guys base their whole life around it, pretty much. But either way, we're going to be starting. We'll get to that all later. We're going to start off with Netherlands, who finished bottom of the table, 2-7, equal with two other teams, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, down at the bottom. Got 2 wins. Now, this grade was kind of tricky for me, because initially, after the Bangladesh win, heck, even after the Australia match when they lost by 300 runs, I still kind of felt like this team was really maximising what they had, or they understood what was happening, and I feel like that so much of that can be attributed to it's the Super League? No, it's the. Is it Super League? Yeah, no, it is a Super League, because Netherlands were in it. I was thinking of, what's the division under that? But no, Netherlands were in the Super League for this one-day cycle. Now that Super League is going extinct, but because they were able to qualify from the Cricket World League Division 2, or whatever the things are called, because they were able to qualify for that, they gained so much exposure over the last 4 years, all right? Even though England nearly put 500 on them, all right, and they've been drubbed so many different times in this cycle, they picked up a few wins here and there. And I feel like what they did more so was when it came to the World Cup qualification, which is I'll get to the point first. When it came to the World Cup qualification, they had so much more exposure to the way one-day cricket is played. And because of that, even though you look at their team on paper, West Indies trump them, bro. West Indies have got a way better team. Sri Lanka did qualify. Who else did they have to beat to get into there? Even Nepal, in many different ways. Fantastic damn team, right? Namibia, fantastic team. But it's not even necessarily the way the Dutch team is constructed, which I feel like actually Namibia does a really, really good job of this, is understanding, okay, what players go where, how can they be applied at any old different point. But the way... it comes down to intangibles, honestly, and I kind of don't like saying this because it's the old classic old head thing saying, oh, they need a better captain, they need someone to, rile up the troops and give them a bit of passion going in. But honestly, that is what Scott Edwards did to this team, and I feel like this group, having been together more or less for the largely unchanged for the last 4 years, other than, your Vikram Singhs and some of those guys have just come in, I feel like that group has just got such an understanding of the changes that need to be made at any given moment. They understand how the game adapts. They understand how things are played. And for that is why they were able to qualify for the World Cup first of all. But because also of that World Cup qualification process exposure, that's why they started off this tournament with such a bang. Because Scott Edwards was so comfortable in the captaincy shoes. And you could see his entire team had his backing no matter what. So, toward the middle of this tournament, I had Netherlands straight A. Like, they were doing absolutely fantastic. Even though they'd lost some matches at the start, they could have won. Like, who did they play first up? They played... Because obviously they beat South Africa, they beat Bangladesh. They played Pakistan. They really gave Pakistan a run for their money. I know it's 80 runs and then 99 runs against New Zealand, but there were lots of different bits there. They really could have done things in there. Sri Lanka, they went pretty close against. The only real two matches I look at and say, that's the Dutch against just being completely outclassed, were Australia, were India. Honestly, even Afghanistan, I would say actually as well, never really looked true in the game. Even when they lost by 160 runs to England, there was a lot there. Another wicket, if they get Ben Stokes out in that match, which they damn well should have, the game's different. And they probably make the Champions... They do make the Champions Trophy ahead of England if one of those results goes differently, which is pretty fucking hilarious. But alas, that did not happen. But either way, I feel like despite everything that I've just said and how the Dutch understand one-day cricket and the dynamics and all the matchups and when to back in your bowlers, and Scott Edwards just being the man at so many different points, I feel like there was still a little bit to be desired here. Logan Van Beek did not have a great World Cup, nor did Bastelida. Just a few of those guys didn't quite make it click. Max O'Dowd, bless him, he's been their premier... He's been the premier batter in, for the last five years, you'd say Max O'Dowd's been their premier batter, and he just could not make a run to save his life this tournament. It was a bit tough to see on some of those fronts, but so many things, just sort of kept going. They had a lot of resilience. They were able to understand the situation, as I just said. So they're able to get a little bit out of that, because if I told you that Max O'Dowd, Bastelida, Logan Van Beek all had pretty rubbish World Cups, you'd kind of say, what? They didn't win a game there, right? No, they won two. One of them was against South Africa, who made the semi-finals and looked like very much the second best team throughout this entire tournament. And even with that, Netherlands should have won a few more. So, like I said, it was A during the middle of the tournament, but I think towards the end of the tournament, the other teams' lack of exposure in comparison to the Netherlands as a result of coming from the qualification phase, as I just talked about. I think that at the end of the tournament, because there are so many games, that did eventually catch up with them. And so perhaps they all just sort of got reduced to the mean a little bit. But overall, still, I feel like it is successful in a little bit. I know a little bit. I kind of got a little bit... It became a little bit comical in some ways, every time Scott Edwards was asked, oh, is this success? Or what's your goal? Or are you satisfied? It's like, we're making the semi-finals. And that's more of an onus on the journos that just keep asking him and sort of belittling the Netherlands. But, Bro, come on. Bro's just like kept saying it. Like, okay, man, get a different personality. But hey, you absolutely got to respect that. They were absolutely not here to fornicate with arachnids, and they went out, they played their brand of cricket, which I think is the most important thing for Dutch cricket play going forward. However, that is probably going to be hindered by the World Cup Super League not existing anymore. They're going back to playing Nepal now, who are vastly a rapidly improving side, but the Dutch, I feel like, won't be as equipped to stack up against the full members again by the time the next World Cup rolls around, which is really disappointing because that will be an increased team World Cup, and so they'll probably qualify, but they won't have the same lead-in as they had this time. They won't have the same comfort in their game. So that is something I get a little bit concerned about, but that is very much a whole ICC thing. Like, I don't know why they abolished the Super League. I thought it was a fantastic progression for cricket. Like, there's all these Holland boys. There's a couple of them that are actually from Amsterdam, right? And they're actually playing cricket. You know, different heritage and all the rest of it. Maybe they don't live there, but there is a little bit to be had there, and to have now just sort of toss that away. It's a very common ICCL, but either way, I feel like Netherlands did okay with what they did pretty well with the hand that they were dealt this World Cup. But I feel like there was still another win, or maybe even two wins in there, like one of the England, Sri Lanka, New Zealand, Pakistan matches. I feel like one of those should have been able to go their way, but they weren't quite able to capitalise. They had their moments in pretty much every game, but they're getting a B. Yeah, I'm going to go with a B. I was set on a B- there, but I think I've talked myself into a B just by given the over. No, I'm going B-. B-. I feel like they had a little bit more to give, albeit the conditions didn't really suit them, but I think they did okay, all things considered. I really, really hope Dutch cricket continues to stay at the levels that were showed in this World Cup, but we'll see how that goes. All right, let's talk about Sri Lanka, man. Sri Lanka's one of my... I really enjoy watching Sri Lankan cricket. This is one of the teams I feel like has definitely got a really bright future. And the grading I'm going to give here is going to have a massive, big asterisk on it because of the things I'm about to say, right? I think everyone can agree this Sri Lankan team was nowhere near its full strength. If they had the injuries, if they didn't have the injuries they sustained after the Asian Cup, during the Asian Cup, even before that, I feel like they give this tournament a real fucking run for its money. I think they absolutely make the semi-finals with a full pace attack. If they have one into Hasaranga, if their batters hold up, like they've called in, they went into this tournament one of the youngest, I think the youngest team in the whole comp, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe Afghanistan. They ended by calling in guys like Angelo Matthews, and he was like a main bowling option with them. It was the last time he's bowled in ODI cricket. I don't know. But yeah, they were in the news for a few different reasons. But yeah, Sri Lankan cricket, I feel like if they had their full pace attack, they really could have made, I'm willing to go as far to say they could have made the final. Now, I was tempted to say, who knows, they could have even won this damn thing, but given what their two recent showings against India in the Asia Cup final, even in the group stage here, they were just so abysmal. There's no real nice way to put that. I feel like, there's kind of a limitation on it. So maybe a semi-final is about where they could have been. I definitely think they could have given New Zealand a real shake-up. And, they went really close against Australia. They went close against a few different teams. They went close against Pakistan. But ultimately, they didn't. They didn't have this full team, and ultimately you can only go with what you do have. And what they did have was not a great product. To be honest, there's no reason that this team should be losing to Bangladesh. That should not be happening with how poorly Bangladesh played for so much of this tournament. And to finish second bottom, only get 2 wins for the whole tournament, one coming against the Netherlands, the other coming against England. 2 wins for the tournament's unacceptable. This should not be happening in conditions that really suit them, with or without their strongest 11. So I am going to be a little bit lenient because of the players they were missing and just give them a D. But if you had told me at the start of this tournament, hey, this is what's going to happen, I would have said, like, that is a massive fucking cock up. Like, I really hope that we get to see a better part of them, and hopefully their team is better constructed. It finds its feet for the Champions Trophy in a couple years' time, which is in Pakistan. So maybe that actually it could see them. It might not. You never know what you're going to get in Pakistan, right? If that even goes ahead, right? And then you got the T20 World Cup next year. I still like Sri Lankan cricket. I think it's still headed in the right direction, but they're only getting a D for this World Cup performance. It's tough to say. With their full team, I feel like it could have been a lot better. Bangladesh is another one of those teams I'm kind of like, did they underperform? Did they just perform? Is this who Bangladesh just are now? Because in the last couple years, I was excited about this tournament for Bangladesh because obviously the conditions really, really suit them. They've had some really good, really strong developing pace attack, like with Shariful, Mustafiza, and the rest of them. They've been developing really, really well. But it just didn't quite click this World Cup. Shanto didn't quite click. Mehdi Hassan didn't quite click. They shuffled him in about 10 different roles. Like, just put Mehdi at 3, make him be your best spinning option, and just be done with him. He's a set and forget player. But they kind of messed him around a little bit. To be fair, he wasn't playing that well. Well, he didn't play that well. But given the year that he's had, the last 2 years that Mehdi Hassan Miraz has had, it was a bit disappointing for his standards. It's a disappointing way for Shakib Al Hassan to go out, not just by performances, but by that timed out also being part of his legacy now, of which I won't really comment. I think I might comment that in a different time. But, hey, their batting just didn't tick. And it didn't click, rather. I was waiting for the match that it would happen. So what Afghanistan went with this World Cup, the results they got, I kind of thought that's what Bangladesh were headed for. Their bowling attack would be strong enough to keep them at a pretty good level for a lot of the way, but their batting lineup was going to fluctuate. And that was actually wrong, because their batting lineup didn't even fluctuate. It was just bad. It was bad the whole way. So whilst, yes, this is disappointing, I think the overall quality is just not there. Maybe this is just, compared to the rest of the teams and the output that we got to see this World Cup, that just could be who Bangladesh are. Which kind of does suck. But they have made the Champions Trophy, which is something they snuck a win against Sri Lanka somehow, and a win against Afghanistan at the start of this tournament. In hindsight, that is ridiculous. Like, that, I don't really understand how that really happened. That could honestly be, other than the South Africa-Netherlands game, I think that is the biggest upset of the tournament. And the final. But it's been a funny old period for Bangladesh cricket. I don't really know where they go from here, because presumably Shakib is about to announce his retirement, unless he wants to go to the T20 World Cup next year. But the image, they're just a bit, they're a bit all over the place at the moment. They've got some really good young players coming through. Obviously, their under-19 championship winning team of a couple of years. Excuse me. Some of those guys are coming through now. They're starting to really leach into and make a stable position in that starting 11 now, which is good to see. And I do think there will be a future that will progress for Bangladesh. However, their progression certainly is not going to be linear. And I did expect more of Bangladesh over the last couple of years leading into this tournament, but then it got to the start and the lead-in, and it was like, they're just not really that good. So they get a D+ from me. D+. Yeah, I mean, they only won 2 games. I was going to give them a C- for qualifying for the Champions Trophy, but they were 2-7. Like, they're 2-7. Like, you can't get it. You can't get a C for winning 2 games. But D+, Bangladesh, there's greener pastures ahead. Probably, maybe, it's Bangladesh cricket. Who the hell knows? I don't know. England. England. Alright, so. Can tell I'm a little bit giddy with this one, alright? England. What happened, man? What happened? Well, I'll tell you what happened. Their team sucks. Their team is old. The dynamic is no longer there. It's a clunky team. It's all just It's a mashup of very average players that haven't had a lot of exposure together. Liam Livingston was crap. Ben Stokes was pretty average for a lot of this tournament, and then he just kind of came in at the end and made a ton to make it all better. Harry Brook was whatever. Josh Butler was ass. He was terrible for this entire World Cup. David Willey was okay. Chris Wokes was very, very hit and miss with his form. And Adil Rashid, even though I think he did end up doing okay in the end, he is just not the player that he was in the 2019 World Cup. And I think that is the biggest problem. They revolutionized the way the game was played in 2019, and then they sort of, because of that revolution, they sort of weren't able to keep up. They weren't able to keep going with what was shown in the past. So that was a little bit funny, and I think you know what grade I'm about to give here. 3 wins, 2 of them coming in the last 2 games of the tournament where they were already way out of contention. They were dead rubbers. Pakistan were shot morally. That win honestly barely even counts, no matter how many runs they run it by. The other was against the Netherlands. Fucking about time they won something. And the other one was against Bangladesh, who I just talked about. Have been pretty crap. England, you got absolutely walloped. You got walloped by New Zealand, which was fantastic to see. It was fantastic to see Rachin Ravindra doing his thing, and we'll get more into that later. But gee whiz, they just looked so almost dehumanized at many points of this tournament. And I feel like Josh Butler kind of just got backed into a corner where he was like, oh, what do I do? And there was just a lot of question mark moments throughout this tournament, right down to giving out central contracts at the start of the tournament and then saying, actually, no, you're probably going to retire. We're not picking you again. So that was pretty... They just got caught up in their own... I don't know if in their own selves. I feel like they lost their identity. They didn't know who they were for this World Cup. And identity, assurance, portability, comfort is the most important thing in white ball cricket, which is their whole philosophy. If you remember, that's kind of what they started. And yet, they just weren't there. England, it's an F. You're getting an F. It is a massive fucking fail of a World Cup. And even though, and I'm kind of going back a little bit from what I said, I'm kind of being a little bit hypocritical because my reason for the England grade is different to Australia and all the rest of them. I think their team just wasn't that good. So maybe it is harsh to say that this is an F. But if you have Ben Stokes on your team, you should not be winning 3 out of 9 games, finishing 7th on the table, only just beating Bangladesh, Netherlands, and Pakistan, getting walloped by everyone else, and looking damn right submissive in so many points. You are getting an F. Next team. Afghanistan, man. Afghanistan. This is a really tricky one for me because I didn't expect quite this much from Afghanistan at the start of the tournament. I was kind of more leaning towards the Bangladesh camp in terms of subcontinental underdog teams that could make a surprising run. But in hindsight, after the warm-ups, even after the first game, after Bangladesh, even though Bangladesh won that, it just kind of felt like Afghanistan were the more sustainable team, right? And their bowling was fan-bloody-tastic for so much of this World Cup. But what was really good was there was a lot of assurance in their top order. Hashmat Shahidi, Shahidi, as I prefer to say. Shahidi, he was very slow, and he did kind of he slowed them down. He bogged them down at many different points. However, there was safety there. And when you combine that with dynamic guys like Ramanala Gabaz and Zadran and those type of guys, there was... and Asma Omarzai, woohoo! What a player! What a player! They have seriously found one in Azmatullah Umazai. I've been doing this Afghanistan test. So this is a tangent. I've been doing an Afghanistan test only save of a cricket captain recently, and this guy Umazai just came up in the domestic ranks. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna pick him. I don't really know that much about him. I've heard of him, of course, and I've seen him play a little bit of international cricket, but. He came out in my first match of that save. He made 100 in a test and then took 6 for 8 and won us the match against Australia. It was pretty damn good. Been a fan of him ever since that. Unfortunately, that didn't happen in real life. But anyway, this was his coming out party this World Cup. He was fantastic in so many different parts. This team works together so well. And if they could just iron out a few different things in the top and in the middle, this team is still going to be progressing. And unlike Bangladesh, where I said they're going to progress, but it's probably not going to be linear, Afghanistan growth is absolutely linear. They just keep getting better and better. Every time you watch them play, I would honestly say most teams that, well, you can't tour Afghanistan anymore, but if you're going to tour Afghanistan, hypothetically, Afghanistan are going to be favourites against pretty much every team at this point, right? In the one-day T20 arena. They've just got a lot of assurance, and now their paces are really starting to back it up. Your Naveens of the world, your Fazal Haqs of the world, and then you got Omar Azai's then as well. There's a lot there. There's a lot there that you really, really like to see. And, but all the same, it's still 6th place. 4 and 5, they were 2 points off the semi-finals, and then a whole point of net run rate. Even with all of that, they could have made semi-finals. They could have done better, for sure. They could have done better if a few different things had gone their way. Like, let's be real. How did they not beat Australia? They damn well should have. They deserve to in many different ways. But then I feel like that inexperience and lack of security in the bowling kind of came back to bite them a little bit. And Hashmat just sort of looked a little bit out of ideas and in unfamiliar territory. Whereas if I compare that to someone like Scott Edwards, who was very controlled in his manner. He knew what his troops were good at. He knew what the matchups were going to be. He thought about the scenarios very, very well. And there's another player that we'll talk about at the end here who does that very well as well. But I feel like there's a lot of inexperience on Hashmat's captaincy side, even though he's been captain for a while and he's 29, 28 years old now. So he's been around the block a while for Afghan cricket. However, there's just a little bit lacking there in terms of, okay, what can we do if the going gets tough? What's scenario B? Afghanistan is a scenario A team. They're not someone that's just going to keep biting, no matter what, right? They're not someone who can adapt on the fly. They're who they are. They're Afghanistan cricket. And that's probably going to change soon enough. But to beat England, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, pretty much beat Australia. They got pretty close against South Africa too. And then, the Bangladesh loss. I don't know how they've lost to Bangladesh. But if they just have their normal cricketing ability and they beat Bangladesh at the start of this tournament, they go even on New Zealand, and then they probably play the rest of the tournament pretty differently. And then as well, obviously the Glenn Maxwell thing happened. They probably should have made the semi-final. Should they? No. I feel like it's too harsh to say they should have made the semi-finals, but there absolutely was a way they could have done it. But given what they showed and given the future of Afghan cricket that was on display in here, I think you've got to give them an A- here. That's what I'm giving them. I feel there was just so much promise. There's a lot of heart in this performance for Afghan cricket. It was really, really good to see. And you definitely can understand if, in 5 or maybe 10, 15 years' time is more realistic, if they are a genuine cricket superpower, and if they are in contention for these tournaments like this. I don't feel like it's that far away. I don't think it's out of the room of possibilities. And it's always great to have another team at the top, and they play the game with so much panache maybe not panache. I know what the right word is. They play it very, very entertainingly. It's great to watch Afghanistan play their cricket. So we get an A- with them. Bloody well done, Afghanistan. Pakistan, man. What happened? What happened, Pakistan? They lost 4 on the trot in the middle of this tournament to India, Australia, Afghanistan, South Africa, respectively. And then England at the end when it was a dead rubber. They had some good moments. They were very... They came back with the ball very well against Australia. They batted very well in various different points. They facade their way to win against New Zealand somehow with the rain effect. Beat Bangladesh pretty comfortably. Beat Sri Lanka okayly. They just kind of won it. It didn't feel that out of the realm of possibilities. And then Netherlands they got a scare against. And that's the thing with Pakistan cricket. They just keep getting scared. There's so many scary moments. So even in this India game where they lost by, with like 20 overs to spare, they looked at one point like they were going to make 350. They looked like they were absolutely killing him. Ahmedabad was silent. And yet they just, once the door was open for India, that was all Kuldeep Yadav needed. He was the one that stood out to me that match. Even though I think he only took 2 wickets. It's all Jadoo needs. And when you compare that against the mentality of Pakistan, it's hard not to feel like this was one that they just should have done a lot better. And with a fully fit team, this lineup, this tournament, I should say, looks probably a bit different for them. But it wasn't that far off full fitness. And I think it was more so just the symbolism of Naseem getting injured halfway through the Asia Cup. That's what kind of put him off. At that point, they looked like they were just going to do it, no matter what. Their dynamic looked so fantastic in the Asia Cup. And then for that to suddenly just be stripped away just like that, I don't know, man. I don't know. What happened? What happened, Pakistan? It's the question that you can always ask with the Pakistan team. What happened? And they've come 5th a game and 9.9 behind on net run rate. Like, really... I know it kind of looks close, but Afghanistan definitely always felt closer to the semi-finals than Pakistan did. It's just timid, man. I don't know what the next step for this team is. Babar's stepped down from captaincy. I think that's good. Babar Azam, I won't say anything about his batting because he's a fantastic player. We all know that. But his captaincy does leave a lot to be desired, especially if you are the figurehead of a team who needs to keep progressing. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's he doesn't seem to have that dog, you know. It's all those intangibles about Pakistan cricket that sort of bring them down. Harris Ralph, what the fuck was going on this World Cup, mate? What the fuck was going on? I don't get it. He's been so fantastic for the last 4 or 5 years in one day and T20 cricket especially, but one day cricket he's been pretty good as well. And then he just lost his terror. He kept missing his length. He was way too short of a length. It was holding in the pitch. On pitches that are this slow, like, come on, bro, it's just not going to work. So I don't know what Harris Ralph was doing this World Cup, but if things like that, maybe it's just the dynamic. Maybe he feeds off Naseem being there and things like that. Shaheen was up and down. He probably should have had a better World Cup, but maybe the captaincy is what he needs to really drive him and the team forward. Maybe that's kind of what needs. Shah Massoud is also the Test captain, which is interesting. It's interesting. Shah's a really good captain. He's a really good leader. But he's like, he averages like below 30 in Test cricket, right? I'm pretty sure. And he's barely in the team sometimes. It's Shah Massoud. Bit of intent for you, but, you know, I don't know. But Pakistan is just another tournament that got away. It's another Pakistan tournament. For that, it's a C- for Pakistan. I don't think it's a complete disaster because I don't feel like their team was really that geared up to do that much better. But at the same time, they should have done better. It's just... Actually, no, I'm dropping it. It's a D+. It's a D+ for Pakistan. Yeah, I'm sick of it. I feel like Pakistan fans and their players, their coach, everything associated with Pakistan cricket should be sick and tired of being sick and tired. This happens time and time again for Pakistan cricket. And to not make the semi-finals, to just keep coughing up at these most incredibly important moments, is just becoming part of their personality. It's part of their makeup. And when you compare that to their name, well, maybe not, but you compare that to the teams of the similar quality, why aren't they going the full way? Why aren't they even making the semi-finals? This Pakistan team is better than New Zealand. I've convinced myself here. This team is way better than New Zealand. You look at the sheer fucking quality of Mohammad Rizwan, Imam ul Haq, Fakhar Zaman, Babar Azam, Shadab. What the fuck is up with Shadab this World Cup, bro? I don't understand why these players just aren't working together. Such kill. They got all these guys that you can just plug and play, supposedly. But it's just not working. It's a D+. It might even be a D. This really needs to change. They've got 2 years before the Champions Trophy that they are hosting in 2025, supposedly. Who knows if that's even going to go ahead. But they really need to find an identity, and fast. I don't know if Shaheen is the identity man, but goddamn, they're screaming out for one right now. D+, please, Pakistan, for the sake of your nation, be better. On to the semi-finalists now. Now, New Zealand will start off with. Now, this is a funny one for New Zealand. Let's talk about the goddamn positives. There's so many positives for New Zealand this World Cup. Racha Ravindra, what a fucking player. Starting off the tournament against England, winning by 9 wickets. Devon Conway, Racha Ravindra, just putting him to the sword. It is beautiful stuff. It was such gorgeous hitting, such beautiful ball striking into the ground. The bowling was pretty rubbish. Let's be real. But gee whiz, Ratchin, what a way to announce yourself to the world. And quick little tangent that I did talk about on the last episode. But people are always like, oh, we'll just ease the young players into it. We don't want to overload them. We don't want to burden them with this massive, major part of being in the team. But batting Racha Ravindra for the small first part of his international career at number 7 and being predominantly a left-arm orthodox bowler who can bat a little bit, giving him that role, what? That's not who he is. He's honestly, and I think Racha will definitely get better with his bowling, but at the moment, he's a batter who can roll some over a little bit. He's not a guy who's going to be bowling 10 overs and then can hit at the end. He is a genuine quality cornerstone. And you're just pigeonholing him to number 7 in this role he's never played? Come on, what was up? And that's why I'm so happy that they came to their centres, they batted him in the top 3, and look at it. He was their top run scorer. He's team of the tournament for sure, in my books at least, and was one of the overall players of the tournament. He was such a glowing light, and the arrival of Racha Ravindra has come a lot sooner than what I expected. I've been a massive Ratchin fan, but to see it come in this tournament was so cool to see. And it's good to know, it's comforting for New Zealand cricket to know that there is something now after this golden generation are going to retire, because this was their real last sort of run at things. Now, what I will say with New Zealand, this team isn't, it's not actually that good, so I don't feel like you can really be too disappointed with a semi-final appearance. I don't think did anyone pick them to beat India? Did anyone pick them to beat India? If you did, get real. Get real. So on that front, they finished this World Cup with four losses, did they? No, they beat Sri Lanka. So they lost to India, Australia, South Africa, Pakistan, then beat Sri Lanka, then lost to India to get knocked out, right? I think... but then I look at the teams they've beaten. They beat Afghanistan. They smashed them, actually, which is a pretty good win in hindsight. Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Netherlands, England, Sri Lanka. But they lost to the big nations, and I feel like that's kind of where they sit at the moment. They're that next tier under. I think Pakistan and Afghanistan were probably... maybe not Pakistan. It's so hard to say. I was going to say that Afghanistan are more of a semi-finalist team for this World Cup, but then New Zealand beat them by 150 runs. I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel like this is just it's a very New Zealand tournament. It's okay, good stuff. Not much really else to say, but fantastic for them that they've found Racha Ravindra. That Glenn Phillips is doing his thing. I wish Lucky Ferguson was a bit better. I wish he was. I mean, the conditions just didn't suit him. Mitch Santner, they had to put a lot of the workload on Mitch Santner, and quite frankly, Mitch Santner's just not that guy. Like, he's fine enough player, even a good player in these conditions especially, but to have so much of your quality and results riding on Mitch Santner, like, it's just not a position you want to be in, right? So, it's a B. B. Yeah, we're giving New Zealand a B. Yeah. So, overall, I'll sum that up again. Okay. So, New Zealand's, their quality is average. Their young players for the future are average, but they've got one golden boy. They've made the most of what they've got for this entire generation. Kane Williamson was in, he was out, he was in again. He came back, he's making runs. Daryl Mitchell, fantastic goddamn player. Devon Conway, fantastic goddamn player. They're just missing a few different links, and I am concerned about how that looks going forward. But for this tournament, given what they were given, I think it's a pretty expected result, and for that reason, it's a B-. Yeah, downgraded it at the end there because I don't think there's actually that much to write home about. Honestly, it might even be a C+. It might be. It's just kind of, yeah. But I think people did get sucked into thinking that that they're gonna win the World Cup after they just walloped England. But anyone with half a brain knew that England were just this bad. Like, I think people just knew that. But then everyone just sort of reacted as if they didn't. So, I don't know. But they do New Zealand things. It's whatever. Alright, and on to the easiest rating of the entire list. Australia, they've won the fucking World Cup. They have won 9 matches on the trot. There was a bit of magic about this team at the back end of this tournament, which is crazy to think about, given this is just the same group of players, the same group of test players. They just work. It just works, apparently. It goes completely against all of what should work in white ball cricket, and yet they currently hold. If you include the women's titles as well, they've won what? So they hold the Men's Test Championship Trophy, the Women's ODI T20 World Cup. They hold the ODI World Cup. They own the men's and women's Ashes. You got the Commonwealth Games gold medal. You've got so that's 7, and then you've just got the Champions Trophy, which is back in 2 years, and the T20 World Cup for both for the men's that they don't hold. 7 out of 9 of the big titles that Australian cricket can hold, they do hold right now. And it's pretty much with the old team. It's just the normal team. There's not much really to say about this. But to think about where they were, halfway through against Sri Lanka, against India, they looked hapless. Against South Africa, they got mauled. Against Afghanistan, they didn't look great. 5 runs against New Zealand, despite making 380. England, they didn't look great. Pakistan, they almost conceded a lot of runs at the back end of the last inning. So the front end of you know what I'm trying to say. It was so wishy-washy, but they just kept finding a way to do it. This team is the worst side ever to ever win a World Cup. No bullet point. Let me do that again. I just sort of started over. This team is the worst team to ever win a World Cup. It is a dysfunctional middle order. The dynamic is terrible. They have no depth specialists. Their new ball bowlers didn't really work for any of this World Cup. Adam Zampa was up and down. He was good in the end. Then was not good against some of the big nations. Steve Smith was terrible. This team goes against all of the formalities of everything that a one-day cricket team should be. And for that reason, it is the best World Cup win of any team ever. It's an A++. This team has no right to be winning this World Cup. But because everything was out of their favour, because they were so stupid about it, it somehow just works. As I said, this is the worst team to ever win a World Cup. But I do not mean that in a derogatory sense at all. It is complimentary. Because to think what this team achieved with Smith at 4, Labuschagne at 5, like those cornerstones don't really work. The hit and miss of Glenn Maxwell, not really having a real wicketkeeper that has any real substance. Josh Inglis, actually, without Josh Inglis, they probably don't win the semi-final. And he had a few good knocks, a few very vital knocks at various times in this tournament. Don't pop off the page on the stats sheet, but they work. When you think about Travis Head, Mitch Marsh, not known to play as a spin, I tell you that much. Mitch Starc was wayward. He was shocking for most of this World Cup. Hazel was alright. He was alright. Pat Cummins had very average stats, but fuck me, he captained his ass off in the final. And I feel like he bowled a lot better than what his stats suggest throughout the entirety of the World Cup. To the point where I actually wouldn't mind him being thrown back in the T20 arena because of the change-ups he has developed, the way he can use the pitch, bowl it into the pitch with his slower balls off cutters, and he doesn't just have to go full at the stumps for full pace. I feel like he could be a pretty good death combo bowler with Nathan Ellis. So, I mean, there's not much to say. They won the World Cup. It's the ultimate thing. It's the ultimate thing in world cricket. They've done it. A++. Fucking unbelievable. Oh, South Africa, bro. South Africa, come on. Come on, man. What is he doing? 7 for 2 in the World Cup in the group stages. Only, other than losing to the unbeatable India, he only lost to Netherlands, which is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I don't know how that happened. But we thought, the only chink in the armour is chasing. Like, when they don't have their ability to construct the innings and play everything on their terms, they can fall. But they lost in the semi-final, batting first. They won the toss, everything went their way, but they still just can't find a way to have that dog in them. They just can't find a way, man. And it felt in various phases like this was the South African team that was going to turn around the corner. But I can't come up with an explanation to why it hasn't worked. I mean, the top 6, there's 6 straight-up batters and then the 5 genuine bowlers. Like, Jansen is not a 7 at this point in his career. He was pretty damn good this tournament, to be fair to him. He did very well, but he's not sustainable. And that did show at various points. The top 6 and then bottom 5 format, I suppose, or makeup of a team, it's not something that should work in one-day cricket. But because of the way they all work together, their explosiveness, because you have Heinrich Klaasen and Quinton de Kock, it all went perfectly. And that is exactly how it should go. However, so South Africa has very much played with the idea with, our goal is to win the World Cup, obviously, like every other team. Their goal is to win the World Cup. But to win the World Cup, we're going to have to beat India. And to beat India, you need the highest ceiling possible. So they played the entire tournament, this entire last couple of years even, with their full ceiling team. And I actually kind of like that idea. And it's sort of why, in between the last episode and now, and as much smack as I talk on Mitch Starc, it's why before the semi-final, I was kind of I was very much in the Sean Abbott should play camp, and that he's a better option at this moment. And whilst I still believe Sean Abbott would have been the better short-term option, it goes back to that South African philosophy. To win the World Cup, you need the highest ceiling possible to beat India. And Mitch Starc is a massive fucking ceiling raiser than Sean Abbott is, right? And I feel like that is kind of the idea South Africa went in with this entire World Cup. And it was probably not going to work. It probably wasn't. And to think that there were points in this World Cup where you did feel like, hey, like this could be it. Like this could be at least where they win a semi-final. Perhaps that's naive, but the fact that it got to that point, it was pretty exciting. And it was a little bit of that sort of reverse evolution of one-day cricket. It was like, no, we're going with just 6 and 5. We're not going with the whole fluctuating all-rounders thing. We're just going to have guys who do one thing and they're damn good at it. And you know what? It worked. It worked for so much of this World Cup, but unfortunately it got undone for them in the semi-final, where it so often has come undone for them. I'm not really sure what else there is to say. It's really hard to give South Africa a grade because the way they played throughout this entire World Cup was fantastic. As I just said, it made you believe that they could do this. And I feel like the fact that they got to that stage is such a massive pass for them. I wasn't expecting this team, even after the way they came back against Australia, I wasn't expecting this team to really have that much of a chance. I wasn't expecting it to cause this much havoc. But they knew what they were good at, and they damn well executed it. I'm giving them a B+ for this. Even though they fell short at the hurdle, South Africa... I feel like not many people gave South Africa a chance to make the semi-finals if you had said this maybe a year ago. Or even 6 months, even a couple months before this World Cup. Before the Australia tour. 2 matches into the Australia tour, they're down 2-0. To say that, hey, they're going to make the semi-final, they're only going to lose to one full member. They're only going to lose to one full member in the group stage, and that being India. You would think, wow, look, what a World Cup. And even though they can't shake that chokers label, and I know I'm kind of being a bit hypocritical here, or not being consistent in my logic, because I said kind of the opposite way with Pakistan. Even though they kept this choking label, even though they fell short yet again, there was so much excitement. There was so much in this World Cup that belonged to South Africa. There was so much in this World Cup entertainment value. There was so much that just kept the dead rubbers from not being completely dead that can be attributed to South Africa. It gave me a reason to watch cricket, and that in itself is something. It's something that you weren't expecting. Unfortunately, with Quinton de Kock going out the door now, I don't know where they go from here. They need their bowling is still fantastic, and you got Janssen to keep getting better, hopefully. But their top order and their batting, like Timber Bavuma, eek. Timber Bavuma's a big eek, and Quinton de Kock is out the door now. Ed Markham's still great. Heinrich Clarkson's still great. You know, those guys are still great. But where does it go to? I don't know. David Miller was pretty okay. He was decent at some points, but it didn't quite click. And actually, I was going to say it didn't click in the big moments, but it very much clicked for David Miller specifically, but it only really clicked for him. I'm downgrading actually to just a B. I think they'll still be happy with the way they played in a lot of different ways, but I think the idea to win the World Cup was a bit fantastical. I don't think they were ever truly going to win the World Cup. They played and they gave themselves every chance to do it, and that should absolutely be admired. So, well done to getting to this point, but the semi-final win still eludes you. Don't understand why it can't happen. Please, 2027, home World Cup, get it done by then. Otherwise, next time, it's an F. And last of all, we got India. One of the best one-day teams ever assembled. The perfect dynamic. When Hardik Pandya went out, it was I thought, that's a pretty big loss. But then they replaced him with fucking Mohammad Shami and Suryakumar Yadav. Right? And Shami was the best bowler of this World Cup. Sky didn't have a great World Cup, to be fair. But he didn't need to for so much of this. But he's the best. I will say, I'll be controversial. Sky is the best T20 international player of all time. Maybe. He's at least got the best peak, right? But you put these two guys in to compensate for Hardik Pandya, you're like, well, they've barely even lost anything. But they did finally miss out, and it did finally come back to bite them. But the amount of joy, the amount of unity, the amount of cricket love that India brought to this World Cup was incredible. Virat Kohli is the best batsman you and I will ever see in white ball cricket. Straight up. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He is the best male ODI batter of all time. And if you combine it with T20, he's probably the same. His sheer aura was back this World Cup. You just felt like no matter what, he was writing the goddamn script. He was the king. Rohit Sharma was whacking that thing out the door. Shubman Gill is one of the most exciting talents in world cricket. Shreyas Iyer, fucking hell, what a gorgeous human being. And Who did I miss in there? KO Rahul. Such a portable guy. He is batting at 5. He can open. He can bat 6. He can bat 7. He can wicket keep. He can do everything. He can captain. They're bowling. Jasper Brimmer is probably the best bowler on earth right now. Mohammad Shami had a bowling average of 10. Kuldeep Yadav bowls fucking left arm wrist spin. And he was great. Ravindra Jadeja is the best number 7 in history. Mohammad Siraj was the number 1 ranked ODI bowler this World Cup. And it's for that reason that India get an F. To have all of these things have been also perfectly stood out to you this entire way through, and to still fall short is unbelievable. It was either A plus or F. There's no in between, and to fall short so drastically at the final hurdle is just something so incredible, and it's a straight F. Alright, so that concludes the team gradings of this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I told you, I did warn you about there was going to be some hot takes. Don't be so hot takes. Some are a little bit clickbaiting. Some of these are going on the newly established TikTok account, and hopefully can get a few clicks from Angry Indians and all the rest of it. But hey, thanks so much for listening to the Big Swing Noting podcast. I would just like to say a very, very quick, brief summary on the World Cup final, by the way. Bro, I'm so amazed. For one, I can't believe that India didn't win the World Cup. I'm amazed that this Australian team, given how dysfunctional it has been through, honestly, since 2015, really, they've never had a defined middle order. I've kept saying that you need portability in one-day cricket, but what do Australia do in World Cups? They throw it in your goddamn face. And it doesn't matter what they do, they'll win no matter what. six goddamn times. And Pat Cummins, I've been a big backer of Pat Cummins' captaincy, but it has been hard to deny that his tactics have been a little bit array in the Ashes at times, and in the World Cup leading in, you definitely got the feeling that they hadn't had the right exposure, but he stuck to his guns. And to have the balls, and they said this on the Final Word podcast, by the way, so go listen to that one as well. I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially they're like, Pat Cummins, by electing to win the toss and bowl against a team that can put 600 on you if they see fit, has the best one-day batsman of all time, has all these explosive players, has Rohit Sharma, one of the best one-day players of all time, who always seems to dominate Australia. And then in theory it's also going to turn more later when Australia struggles against spin, when Kuldeep Yadav, when Ravindra Jadeja, who eats Australia for breakfast, will also be there. To know that and to have comfort in saying, yeah, I will be laughed at if this goes wrong, but I am comfortable. And I feel like a lot of that came from, it's like, okay, well, what do India want to do? They want to bat, no matter what. So let's try and make that as assured as possible. We know they're going to bat, so let's not, have a few different game plans and be in a bit of limbo here. They're like, okay, we're going to play with that and say, okay, we know no matter what, we're bowling first. And we can develop the plans accordingly. We know exactly what these conditions are going to be like. We know the pitch is not going to give much bounce. We know it is going to be dewy. And the dew actually became a factor. There's been all this talk about all World Cup. It actually happened, finally. And just to have the balls and have the... And you could see it the way everyone fielded tonight. They saved, 30 runs? 30 runs plus a Rohit wicket with that fantastic Travis Head catch that will surely become iconic in many areas. If he takes that catch, who knows what the total becomes? Because you've got Rohit and Virat at the crease at that point. And Rohit is even more explosive than Virat. And then for Cummins to just come back in and just to keep persisting. Fuck, he bowled well last night, man. Fuck, he bowled well. He definitely... I think Stark got one more wicket. Technically had the best figures, but Cummins, he went a combination of 3? His change-ups, bowling into the pitch, his continual bowling rotations. I don't think the same bowler bowled an over twice in a row for 16 overs? Maybe? I'm not sure. I could be making that up. But there's just so much changing. He didn't allow any of them to get comfortable. He knew exactly what situation the game was going to be in at all times. And every one of his men knew as well. They all were like, yep, I trust you. You are a man. And I think this is an example that there is absolutely a place for player management captaincy. You can have the tactician. You can have the guy who understands the ins and outs of the game perfectly. But there's also the people that just know how to get a team up. Pat Cummins is one of those guys. And this is such an incredible triumph. I said it earlier, the fact that this team had no right to win it makes this, and this is very much recency bias, but this makes it perhaps the best win ever. The best World Cup win ever. They had no right to do this. This team shouldn't be winning a World Cup. And to do it at such gargantuan underdogs, I should say, to the almighty Indian juggernaut is in this World Cup is just incredible. They identified the small bleeding. If it bleeds, you can kill it. And they saw there was a little bit of bleeding at that 6-7 spot. They knew on these conditions that they had almost leveled out. I can't sing the praises of this team enough. They've absolutely proven me wrong. They've proven so many people wrong, but they fucking believe in themselves. They proved themselves right, and that is so incredible. What a World Cup. By the end of it, I very much got World Cup fever, and Pat Cummins is just such a fantastic image of a captain. He even got me being patriotic. I never get patriotic these days. To be honest, like, Australia, I want to love you, but you make it so damn hard. All right, shut up, broken thumb. But fuck, just seeing him as the guy, that gives me some hope, man. That gives me some hope. And wow, just 6 times. 6 times. It is a mockery of world cricket at this point, and it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for listening to the Big Swing Noting podcast. Website hopefully will be up in the next couple of days. Keep it tuned out. We're going crazy places at this summer. Thanks for listening. Play it through.